For almost 50 years, Graceland remained still in remembrance of the rock and roll king, Elvis Presley. The attic at Elvis Presley's Graceland remained sealed for over half a century. Even his closest relatives never entered the dirty, abandoned room. When they eventually opened it, however, they discovered more than simply gleaming jumpsuits and old photos. There had been a resident up there. It evoked such intimate emotions. They were almost unnervingly deep. All this time, who had been hidden in Elvis's attic? Was the Presley family aware of it too? Come discover who has spent 48 years in Elvis Presley's sealed attic. Graceland's Secrets. A 22-year-old Elvis Presley drove through the gates of what would soon be one of the most well-known residences in the world on a chilly spring day in 1957. In those days, the large White House on the outskirts of Memphis cost $12,500, which is about $1 million now. He kept the name the same, Graceland. He enjoyed it exactly as it was. Graceland was first just a place to call home, but it soon became an integral element of Elvis's identity. The land was over 14 acres in size, horses roamed the pastures, stables and barns were present. It was a vibrant area. Scatter, a chimpanzee, was among the most untamed inhabitants. Elvis took him to parties and dressed him in small clothes. Scatter was always up to something, whether it was stealing beverages from people's hands or tugging women's skirts. According to the staff, Scatter was similar to Elvis Presley's wild side, which he didn't always display in public. As the Beatles began to dominate America in 1964, Elvis made a private haven for himself. The Meditation Garden was its name. Under the Tennessee sky, there were white columns, fountains, and flowers. He would go there to escape the commotion and sit and reflect. His wild stage demeanor was not at all like that. Most people never saw this version of Elvis. Calm, quiet, and considerate. The garden revealed his serene side, although other areas of Graceland were more flamboyant and lively. In one room, known as the Jungle Room, the walls and floor were covered in green shag carpet. The furnishings appeared to be from a distant island. He has a TV area in the basement where he could watch 3 shows simultaneously. In the 1960s, that was a huge event. Just hours before his death, Elvis sang his final songs on a piano in the racquetball facility. Around 3:30 this afternoon, Presley passed away here. He had been discovered unconscious and not breathing in his bathroom. However, on August 16, 1977, everything changed. Elvis Presley passed away in his upstairs bathroom on that day. Graceland was more than just a house after that. It turned to become a shrine, an enigma, and a frozen instant. In the days that followed, Memphis saw close to 100,000 fans. They waited to say goodbye, lined the streets, and sobbed outside the gates. Elvis laid in a blue shirt and white suit inside the mansion. Those who witnessed him in that state will always remember it. The city's funeral procession was headed by 17 white Cadillacs on August 18. There were well-known faces including Caroline Kennedy, Sammy Davis Jr., and James Brown. So were Priscilla, Lisa Marie, age 9, and Vernon Presley, Elvis Presley's distraught father. At Forest Hill Cemetery, Elvis was laid to rest beside his mother Gladys. His family hoped that he would finally be able to rest in peace, but that hope was short-lived. 2 days after the funeral, an unimaginable incident occurred. A gang of men broke into the cemetery in the middle of the night and attempted to take Elvis Presley's casket. They failed. Before they were apprehended, they had only partially damaged the tomb. But the message was unmistakable. Elvis was not secure, even in death. Vernon Presley was devastated. He didn't want to take any more chances. He therefore had Elvis and Gladys transferred covertly, with the assistance of the police. They were buried once more in the middle of the night. This time it was within Graceland's meditation garden, which Elvis had created as a peaceful space. Graceland was once again altered by that one choice. It had evolved beyond a house or even a monument. It turned into a stronghold. Vernon closed off access to several areas, particularly the entire second story and the attic above it, installed additional alarms, and employed guards to patrol the property around the clock. The official explanation was straightforward: privacy. Out of consideration for the family, Elvis's personal area, bedroom, and the bathroom where he passed away were to be left unoccupied. However, that story became less credible with time. Following Vernon's death, Graceland was made public in 1982, allowing guests to tour the majority of the estate. They stood silently at Elvis's grave, marveled at the bright stained glass windows in the living room, and saw the kitchen where he prepared peanut butter and banana sandwiches. However, they were never permitted to go upstairs. They had roped off the stairway. The door to the attic remained closed. Not even world leaders were permitted to ascend there. The identical response was always given by tour guides. To show consideration for the family, the upstairs is private, and it remained that way for 48 years. Nobody went upstairs. The attic remained untouched. It was incorporated into the mystery. While tourists gazed at the glistening gold records and rhinestone jumpsuits, they never failed to peek up, curious about the secrets that may be concealed just above them. However, something far more disturbing was concealed in plain sight, even if the closed attic kept tangible secrets out of reach. The king of rock and roll's actual death story. What was known by Elvis Presley's physician that the general public was unaware of. King Falls. The silence in Graceland ended on August 16, 1977. Like many days in Elvis Presley's final years, it began this way. The bedroom was chilly and dark, with the drapes drawn tightly to block out the midday sun. Elvis was 42 years old, and had become accustomed to sleeping through the majority of the day and staying up late. He would occasionally stay up for days before eventually dozing off deeply. Around 2 in the afternoon, Ginger Alden, his girlfriend, woke up. Elvis, however, remained in bed. That wasn't out of the ordinary. Assuming he would eventually wake up, she proceeded about her morning ritual. However, around mid-afternoon, something seemed strange. It was too quiet in the house. Ginger knocked on the bathroom door at 2:30. No response. Elvis was on the floor as she pushed it open. His ankles were in his pajama bottoms. He was now blue-faced. She cried out for assistance. Elvis's close friend and road manager, Joe Esposito, ran upstairs. While someone else called for an ambulance, he immediately began performing CPR. Within minutes, the paramedics arrived. They continued to try to get him back, sirens screaming through the sweltering streets of Memphis as they raced into Baptist Memorial Hospital. Despite their best efforts, doctors declared Elvis Presley dead at 3:30. The news was devastating. Regular programs on radio stations are interrupted. Tears were shed by fans. How could the 42-year-old king have vanished so abruptly? The case's medical examiner, Dr. Jerry Francisco, appeared before reporters that same evening. He responded succinctly and clearly. Heart arrhythmia was the cause of Elvis's death. His heart simply ceased beating. He said it was natural causes. The narrative is over. However, something felt off. Even in 1977, it was evident that Elvis had undergone significant alteration. The slender, vivacious singer had put on a significant amount of weight, nearly 260 pounds. His performances were inconsistent. He frequently struggled to stay upright without assistance, forgot words, and chatted excessively in between songs. The medical reality was more sinister behind the scenes. The autopsy revealed evidence of years of dangerous chemical use, including an enlarged heart, a swollen liver, and physical deterioration consistent with long-term prescription drug usage. What Dr. Francisco had not said was revealed in the toxicology report, which was released later. Strong drugs like to mention a few, were present in high concentrations in Elvis's blood. Why then did Dr. Francisco tell lies? Some believe that his goal was to shield Elvis's reputation and save his family further suffering. Others thought it was more serious, a cover-up to shield not just Elvis, but also the medical professionals who had continued to provide him with drugs. Dr. George Nicopolis can help with that. He was most often known as Dr. Nick. Since 1967, he had served as Elvis Presley's personal physician. Between January and August 1977, the final 8 months of Elvis's life, Dr. Nick prescribed over 10,000 medications, including cease asterisk, 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 asterisk. It wasn't any better the year prior. In 1976, he distributed about 19,000 tablets. Upon further investigation, it was discovered that Elvis had been prescribed 195 medications in the 8 months prior to his death. That is roughly one prescription every 1.5 days. Dr. Nick knew the answer to every question. He claimed that Elvis suffered severe glaucoma, a painful intestinal ailment known as regional enteritis, and chronic discomfort from a head injury sustained in the Army. He claimed those problems needed to be treated with the medications. His most unexpected justification, however, was later. He said that he was genuinely attempting to keep Elvis safe. He asserted that it was preferable to provide him all those medications than allowing him to obtain them illegally or from dubious physicians. Dr. Israel, Nick told medical boards that he would have obtained them elsewhere if I hadn't given them to him. He claimed that while monitoring Elvis, he was attempting to gradually reduce his use of dangerous drugs. However, the Elvis whom the public saw in his final days was not the same person who had revolutionized music. After being given amphetamines to keep him awake for days, he would use strong sleeping drugs to fall asleep. He tried to shed weight by eating a lot of fried food and then taking severe laxatives. Elvis had taken his typical combination of medications on his last day. Early in the morning, he played racquetball before returning to bed and taking additional medication. Those latter doses were probably excessive. The heart of his given up because they were already weak from years of damaging substance usage and the weight of it. Officials in Tennessee didn't believe Dr. Nick's account. He was accused of 14 counts of overdosing on medications in 1980, not just for Elvis, but also for other patients. He was later declared not guilty by a jury, but that was not the end of it. His work continued to be investigated by the Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners. Additionally, they permanently revoked Elvis Presley's medical license in 1995, 18 years after his passing. The story then became even more convoluted in 2020. Destined to Die Young is the title of a novel written by Sally A. Hoddle. She said that Elvis had severe genetic health issues. Her investigation revealed that Elvis had a condition known as alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency, a condition that impacts your liver and lungs. She said that he most likely had a weakened immune system, which could account for his frequent illnesses and high medicine use. If she's correct, Elvis might have been more than a dangerous drug user. Perhaps he was really ill and attempting to heal ailments that at the time were not entirely understood by medical professionals. He visited the hospital for more than simply prescription drugs. They may have been actual crises. Given that the true cause of Elvis Presley's death is still unknown, and that his personal physician ultimately lost his license, one must ask whether the truth was ever intended to be kept secret, or perhaps someone was at last attempting to make it public, battling to conceal secrets. The enormous fan following of Elvis Presley was surprised by news that came out in the spring of 2024. Graceland, the world's most renowned rock and roll monument, was secretly put up for sale by a business no one had ever heard of called Nosany Investments and Private Lending LLC. Riley Keough, Elvis Presley's granddaughter, was the sole executor of his estate upon Lisa Marie Presley's death in 2023, according to court documents. Elvis Presley's only kid, Lisa Marie Presley, passed away. At the age of 54, her mother, Priscilla, confirmed that she was being charged with failing to make payments on a $3.8 million debt. The news was unexpected. Even the most devoted Elvis admirers, who keep up with every aspect of his life and legacy, were taken by surprise. Panic and bewilderment quickly overtook forums and fan pages. Riley Keough's attorneys wasted no time. They filed an emergency plea to halt the sale in Shelby County, Tennessee. After racing to court, they made a serious claim: it was all a lie. The records they submitted show that Riley never had a contract with Nosany Investments. It appeared as though someone had falsified her name in order to gain control of Graceland, as the signatures were forged. However, time was running short. The date of the auction was predetermined. Graceland would be sold in a matter of days if Riley's team couldn't quickly convince the court to step in, and that included everything within. Complete strangers would be in charge of Elvis Presley's private belongings, his rare recordings, and even the upper rooms that were never open to anyone. Then a Tennessee court made his verdict the day before the auction was scheduled to take place. He immediately halted the sale. He described Graceland as a unique cultural resource, and stated that its loss would cause great harm to the populace. What's even more striking is that Nosany Investments did not appear in court. The business attempting to sell Graceland was absent, but Riley's attorneys were present. Therefore, there was no opposition to the judge's ruling. Presley retained control of Graceland. Graceland had already attracted this sort of peculiar attention. The mansion has been the focal point of one of the most bizarre concepts in the history of celebrity since Elvis's death in 1977, that there was no actual death of Elvis Presley. Only a few hours after his death was declared, the first alleged sighting of Elvis occurred. At the Memphis airport, a man who resembled him and went by the name John Burroughs, a name Elvis actually used when he traveled, allegedly purchased a one-way ticket to Buenos Aires. Despite the fact that it was late at night, the witness claimed that he was a heavier version of Elvis, dressed in a white suit and sunglasses. Then, roughly 2 weeks later, a Michigan woman claimed that she was served by Elvis at a Kalamazoo Burger King. She claimed that when he asked if she needed more cheese, she realized it was him. He sounded so familiar. These kinds of stories didn't die down, which is what most people would have expected. They simply continued to arrive. Hundreds of reports had been made nationwide by 1979. In Oklahoma, Elvis was spotted pumping gas. Elvis is in a grocery store in Missouri. Elvis has a false beard during a show in Nashville. The tabloid Weekly World News started a regular segment called Elvis Watch in 1988 to keep tabs on all the sightings, because the claims were so popular. The theories grew increasingly fanciful over time. According to some, Elvis joined the FBI's Witness Protection Program after assisting them in their pursuit of organized crime. Some thought he staged his death to avoid the pressures of fame. According to one tale, he had cancer and desired a quiet death away from prying eyes. Strange details regarding his funeral were mentioned by those who held these notions to be true. They said that his casket was far too hefty, weighing 900 pounds. They also questioned why, after a public viewing, the family decided on a closed coffin. Most notably, they saw something strange on his gravestone. Instead of Aaron, his middle name was spelled Aaron. They argued that unless Elvis wasn't really in the cemetery, the family would never get that wrong. The internet then emerged. Entire websites were created in the early 2000s to demonstrate that Elvis was still alive. His voice was compared in YouTube videos to that of a preacher named Bob Joyce, whose singing remarkably resembled that of the King. Nearly 50 years later, in 2025, internet forums continue to debate Elvis's whereabouts. Some believe he goes by a different name and lives in a small town. Some people think he still occasionally goes to Graceland, disguised so no one can identify him. These theories have long been complex for the Presley family. They appear to be hiding something if they push back too strongly. The rumors get wilder if they remain silent. All of these theories, however, conceal something much more significant. Elvis didn't have to pass away at that time. If others around him had been more concerned about his health than his finances, his death might have been avoided. However, those guys were absolved by the fanciful tales that he was still alive. Made a daring move once the sale was halted. Riley Keough accomplished something that no one in her family had ever done before. She gave permission to open the forbidden attic. For over half a century, what had been concealed up there? The attic was unlocked. A small group of archivists in white gloves ascended the steep steps leading to Graceland's attic on a chilly January 2025 morning. Their footsteps reverberated through the deserted room. August 1977 was the last time someone had gone up there, untouchable for nearly half a century. The air was heavy with dust, but one area of the home was unaltered. High above them, behind a barred door, no one feared to open it, like a time capsule imprisoned inside. The lead archivist carefully twisted an ancient brass key that had remained in the Presley family since Elvis's death, and a solitary naked light illuminated the lock. As though it had been restraining years of anticipation, the door cracked open. Everyone became silent as the light began to seep in for the first time in almost 50 years. It appeared to be a meticulously preserved time capsule, rather than merely a dilapidated storage area. The attic was carefully divided into parts, each of which told a distinct aspect of Elvis's life, either by him or by someone close to him. It was far larger than anyone had anticipated. With heavy blackout curtains covering the dormer windows, it extended across the entire top of the house. The attic was plain in contrast to the rest of Graceland, which is renowned for its flamboyant and ostentatious design. Its floors were bare, and its walls were simple timber. Due to a tiny air conditioner that was still on, the space seemed oddly cold. For all these years, Graceland's maintenance staff had kept it in working order without ever entering. Dozens of crates with labels in Elvis Presley's handwriting ran down one wall. The labels were Hollywood, Comeback Special, Army Days, First Recordings, Tupelo 1945, and Vegas. He seems to have made a timeline of his own life. However, one package that was simply marked after and dated 1977, the year he passed away, was the most notable. The meticulous labor of the archivists began. Before they touched anything, they snapped photos of everything. Like at a museum, each box was assigned a number, and every item within was meticulously listed. Months would pass before they could look over everything. Yet some things drew their attention right away. They discovered an antique teddy bear in the Tupelo region. It had many patches and one missing eye. This was neither a fan gift nor a memento. According to family archives, Bear was Elvis Presley's favorite toy as a child growing up in poverty. Gladys, his mother, had used pieces of her own clothing to stitch the patches. The faded flower patterns on its arms and breast were still visible. Gladys was devastated when Vernon, Elvis's father, was imprisoned in 1938 for signing fraudulent checks, and young Elvis nearly went bankrupt. Was the closest buddy of Elvis throughout those tense months. They discovered a Bible in the Army Days section that had been read so many times that electrical tape was used to hold its spine together. Gladys Presley had owned this Bible, therefore it wasn't just any Bible. When Elvis enlisted in the Army in 1958, she handed it to him. She had placed a letter inside the front cover, encouraging him to maintain his faith while serving. Elvis had scrawled notes, questions, thoughts, and brief prayers throughout the pages, along with underlined verses. Days before his death, in August 1977, one of the final entries was made. Psalm 23 was marked by him. The leather-bound yearbook from Memphis's Humes High School was one of the most heartwarming finds. Elvis rarely signed the books of his students. Being bashful, he was frequently made fun of for his peculiar fashion sense. This one, however, was jam-packed with notes and signatures. He had received encouraging words from classmates. One note said, "Elvis, keep singing. You're making progress." A distinct side of Elvis was revealed in the Hollywood portion, his battle with celebrity. There was a short handwritten message in one pocket of a leather jacket that was created specifically for his role in Jailhouse Rock. "Wear this when you need to vanish," it said. Elvis frequently expressed his sense of being trapped in his celebrity role and unable to lead a normal life. He appeared to wear this garment when he wanted to blend in and have a little moment of freedom. There was a pile of books by the movie props. Most people wouldn't have expected these from Elvis. They dealt with religion, Eastern ideas, and important issues regarding life and death. There were notes and underlines in the margins of many of them. Far from the gospel-singing persona that most people were familiar with, it depicted a guy who was sincerely searching for answers. The archivists were stopped in their tracks when they discovered something in the Vegas section. A 1974 medical report with a confidential label, until the family examines them. The entire contents are remain sealed. However, the cover stated that Elvis needed to make significant lifestyle adjustments and referenced heart issues. Nevertheless, he continued to perform for 3 more years. Despite being aware of what was in the attic, Lisa Marie Presley decided to honor her father's desire to keep it a secret throughout her lifetime. Riley Keough determined it was time to record, though not necessarily share, what was within after she died in 2023. There was no escape plan hidden in the attic. It contained the heart of a guy who carefully considered how the world would remember him because he understood his time was limited. The final remarks of a guy who realized his time was running out were preserved on old dusty tapes. Elvis's voice, weak and full of emotion, broke through the archivist's frozen quiet. What more might be concealed in the shadowy recesses of Graceland's attic? What was kept in Elvis Presley's attic? In 2025, it was like entering a time machine when a group of archivists eventually unlocked the door to Elvis Presley's locked attic. Since August 1977, nothing had been changed inside. Silence filled the air, as if it had been holding its breath for half a century. However, they discovered more than simply antiquated material. The world believed it already knew parts of the man. Among the most unexpected finds was a pile of reel-to-reel tapes with plain handwriting labels. Sessions of Practice, 1976. The polished songs that people were accustomed to hearing were not this. No one else was intended to use them. Elvis was by himself, experimenting. He was blending blues, gospel, and even some early electronic elements. He was obviously still experimenting with concepts and going in ways that no one has witnessed him take. However, there came a moment when the room fell silent. The song was unchained melody, reduced to his voice alone, no instruments, no music. He spoke in a tremulous, passionate voice. Only a few months prior to his passing, it was recorded. Its strength came from the fact that it didn't sound flawless. According to a music specialist, the song made him feel as though he was confronting his own mortality. He wasn't merely acting, as evidenced by every break in his voice. Every word resonated with him. They discovered things far more intimate than glitzy stage costumes as they dug deeper. Lyrics scrawled on notebook pages, napkins, and hotel stationery. Some had small notes to themselves, while others had lines crossed out. To skeptics, one page even contained lyrics that were altered and never included in the final draft. It provided a genuine window into his thoughts. The stack of unopened fan letters, however, was maybe the most depressing aspect. They were still sealed, as they had been upon arrival. Soldiers had written to praise him for making them feel better. Families related how his music helped them get through difficult times. Young musicians sought guidance. One letter, dated 1976, pleaded with him to stop touring and take care of his health. No one ever opened it. Perhaps if it had been, the outcome might have been different. When taken as a whole, these attic discoveries revealed a more profound tale than any biography ever could. They displayed a talented and hurting guy who not only made history, but also preserved vintage toys from his youth. A man who, despite his own struggles, made time to read fan correspondence. Despite his deteriorating condition, a man was experimenting with daring new music. Many fans felt at ease after learning these things. His belongings weren't just any old garbage. They were intentionally retained. It seemed as though he desired for them to remain at Graceland. Not everyone, however, experienced closure. Others said the mystery just got deeper. Why were these very private matters kept secret for almost 50 years? What else may be hidden away? Is there anything more to Elvis's narrative that hasn't been discovered yet? Elvis received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2018. It was another indication of his significance to America, not only as a performer, but also as a person who permanently altered the music industry. Perhaps, however, his true legacy lies beyond the accolades and documents. Perhaps it's in those attic boxes where a man people are still trying to comprehend was hidden under the gaudy costumes and gilded awards. I appreciate you watching. Subscribe, like, and comment. Additionally, click on the video that is displayed on your screen to view another fascinating film. I'll see you over there.